I am Patricia Nelson. I'm an agent with Marsal Lyon Literary Agency. We are based out of San Diego, California, and I have been there since 2014. So 8 years now, which in publishing is like mid-career, which is kind of crazy. Before I was in publishing, I was a PhD student in English. I thought I wanted to become an English professor. But then I realized that I would rather be part of making books than sitting around and deconstructing books. So I fled academia and moved into publishing. I represent middle grade YA and adult fiction, and then a smattering of other things if my existing clients want to do it. But in terms of what I'm looking for new clients, middle grade and YA of all genres. And then in adult, I mostly do women's fiction and romance.
Gotcha. So I've got all kinds of questions for you. I've got literally a page of 5 pages of questions. We're not going to get to them all. But I was curious that you spent time, you were an instructor of literature and writing. So it seems like that would have been eventually a tenure track to stay there, right?
Well, that was while I was in graduate school. So I was part of the meat grinder of underpaid graduate student labor. And I was teaching freshman composition, and then they moved me into honors freshman composition. So the trajectory that I would have been on if I had stayed would be finish up the PhD and then look for a teaching position, hopefully tenure track, although these days mostly everything is a lecturer. Which is part of why I left. Although the bigger reason that I left is that publishing was just always my dream job. It's always what I envisioned myself doing. I was a big reader as a kid. And the only reason that I didn't go for it at first is I'm from the Midwest, and New York just seemed really scary. Like when I graduated college and I thought about going into publishing and the fact that I would have to move to New York, I just wasn't ready. So I fled to grad school instead. But I do think I got a lot out of the teaching that I did. I did that for 4 years. And I think I just learned a lot about how to give feedback, how to give constructive feedback specifically. And also for the 2 years that I taught in the USC honors program, it was a very interesting format where they were going for kind of like a Socratic kind of thing. So we had one-on-one meetings with the students once a month, each student, and we just kind of brainstormed and talked about like ideas and building up whatever they were thinking about from the very beginning, which is a lot like what I do as an agent with existing clients as we think about what they want to develop next.
Gotcha. So those grad students who got their heart broken, who are listening to this, like, well, okay, but that was terrible for me. But that was the foundation upon which many writers have received an extraordinary feedback that did not break their heart quite as much.
I'm very nice. I think I've always been pretty nice in my feedback, but I am extremely editorial with my clients, and I think that part of that comes from that experience teaching. So
from there, you become an intern with the Angela Rinaldi Literary Agency.
Yeah, that was a fascinating experience. So basically, I decided that, publishing had always been my dream. Being an academic was not my dream. And so I was finally ready to buck up and move to New York. By this point, I was in my mid-20s. And I didn't want to move without having a little bit of experience, like resume in publishing under my belt. So basically, I just cold emailed every agency that was either based in Southern California or said that they had remote internships and were somewhere else. And most of them ignored me, which is what happens when you send a bunch of cold emails. But Angela, who is kind of like a one-woman shop, she was looking for someone to basically sift through her queries. And she was also in LA. I was in LA at the time in Silver Lake, and she was in Culver City. So she's about a half an hour from me. So I would just go over to her house and talk to her about her publishing experience and read her queries. And then we would talk about like which ones were workable and which ones not so much. And I found a couple things, even like during that internship, that she ended up signing and selling, which even though I wasn't the one selling them, it was a really great rush. So I did that for about 4 months, 6 months, 4 months, 6 months, something like that. Which for anyone listening who's looking to get into publishing, my advice when I do informational interviews with people is you should never be doing an unpaid internship for more than 6 months. At that point, it's just exploitation. Like, you've probably learned all that you can, and then they need to start paying you. So she wasn't in a position where she was looking to start paying someone. When I had originally done my cold emails, the other person who had responded to me was Elise Capron at the Sandra Dykstra Agency in San Diego. And she had said, we're not looking for any interns right now, but if you're ever down in San Diego, which is about 2.5-hour drive from LA, if you're ever down in San Diego, let me know. We can go get a drink and talk about publishing. Your resume is interesting. Like, I would love to chat with you. And so when I decided that it was time to move on from my internship and look for something else, I happened to find a reason to be in San Diego, and I emailed Elise and let her know, like, hey, I'm gonna be in your neck of the woods. Is that offer to meet just for an informational interview still open? And she was so generous, just like one of the kindest people. I don't know if you've interviewed her. She doesn't do a lot of children's, so she might not have crossed your path.
Yeah, but I'd love to.
Yeah, she's great.
Please come on.
So she and I met, and we just talked about publishing, and she told me that she knew of another agency also based in San Diego, the Marsal Lyon Agency, where Kevin Lyon, one of the owners, was about to lose her assistant and was looking for a new one, or was going to look for a new one, but was worried about posting the job listing because she knew if she posted it, she would get a huge flood. So Elise said, like, let me just connect you with Kevin and see if you guys click to be an in-office assistant. And we met. Like, I lucked out completely. The timing is just unbelievably fortunate. And whenever people ask me, how do I mimic your path to publishing? I always say, you can't, because I just like tripped and fell into it. I mean, I made the effort, but like, it was just sheer luck that there are, I think, maybe 4 paid assistant positions in Southern California, and I happened to end up with one before the job was even posted. So for a while, for about 1.5 years, I commuted 3 days a week from LA to San Diego. Again, 2.5 hours each way. Because I didn't want to move down to San Diego without knowing if it was going to work out. So I thought, like, it's 3 days a week, I'll just give it a shot. And I wasn't quite ready to give up on LA yet. And then after, 1 year, 1.5 years, it became very clear that this was definitely what I wanted to do. It was going to work out with Marsal Lyon, and I just needed to buck up and get myself down to San Diego. And that was in 2015 that I moved down here. That's where I still am.
Just out of curiosity, 2.5 hours each way. I'm assuming you're the one doing the driving.
Yeah.
So audiobooks maybe, but you can't be using that time to go through submissions or anything.
No, so many audiobooks. That was the only point in my life when I was like a really high volume audiobook listener. Usually I prefer to read an actual book because I can read faster than I can listen. I can't listen to the audiobook sped up. It just goes in one ear and out the other. But yeah, when I was doing that, I was listening to a lot of them, which was actually great for market research at the beginning of being an agent. Like, I was just listening to a lot of recently published stuff in the genres I wanted to represent. It would have been ideal. There is a train that goes from LA to San Diego, but it's set up for commuters the other way. So all of the times for the train go from San Diego to LA in the morning, and then LA to San Diego in the evening. And I was a backwards commuter, so that didn't work.